What's up, everybody? I'm super excited for this live, and this has been a long time in the making, and I'm really lucky to have probably the two best marketers in Israel here to join us, and I would probably say also among the best technology B2B marketers in the world. And so I'm really thrilled to have this conversation, a conversation that's overdue, a conversation that must be addressed because as Billy, Zoe, and myself have discussed offline, that we see there's a lot of challenges that people having taking their marketing to the States or abroad and finding out they're not having the right people properly serve them. So that's why I'm really excited to have with me Billy from Marketing Envy and Zoe from ZoecialMedia. Thanks so much for joining our live today, and I'm looking forward to having an awesome time. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Thanks for inviting us.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
So I'm going to say kind of why I just thought that this was so important. It's kind of been sitting on my shoulder for a while now, is that, and we've also discussed this offline, and I want to hear, of course, your opinions, is I'm seeing more and more looking at some accounts of being managed by Israeli companies, startups in particular, technology companies, being managed by American agencies that they don't know what they're doing. And there's a few things that I've noticed. And I'd like to unpack that, as well as I'd like to hear what your guys' thoughts and experiences are. And we're going to go over all the pros and the cons in this conversation. If you have any questions, comments, anything, please drop them over in the comments. We will pull them up. We will answer them live. So this is your opportunity. If you disagree with anything, those will get a priority. Disagreement is the best form of conversation. It provides the best clarity and the best opportunities for us to learn. So I'm really happy for us to kick off today. So George, so maybe Billy, you can start and tell us a little bit about what have you seen specifically. Do you think is we'll unpack everything, but let's start with culturally. I'm finding that there's a lot of issues going on culturally when they're working with an American agency or an American marketing team trying to do ads for an Israeli startup. So culturally, what do you find are the pros and the cons of them working with a non-Israeli team?
Well, obviously, Israelis get the yalla yalla approach, right? So, the Americans, very organized, take their time, very planned, very processed, which is obviously something that's very, very important. But they often lack the sense of urgency. And I'm not really sure that I agree with your sentiment that they don't know what they're doing, but they know less what they're doing in the context of the Israeli startup and the Israeli tech system that they've got huge monkeys on their shoulder. They need to get their, campaign up and running within weeks as opposed to months, and they need to hit the ground running. And it's something that inherently is within the Israeli culture. So transforming that or expecting that to translate into the US, I'm talking predominantly about the US, but obviously, plenty of companies work with companies in the UK and in other countries as well. But let's keep it focused on the US. So, there is a big gap when Israeli companies tend to start working with the American agency that, it's like what the two cultures collide. And that's we found that a big issue. And that's when sort of like companies tend to start to come back and say, actually, we found it more effective to work with the Israeli agency.
Did you guys ever see that? There was this famous slide deck. It's from like several years ago for like Intel employees that were coming to visit like Intel Israel, and kind of like a breakdown of the Israeli culture. Yeah. So I don't remember exactly what was there, but Zoe, I you wanted to say something about that. What do you find about the cultural differences?
I think what Billy was saying is right. When we see clients, even working with clients in America, we find their entire way of working, their processes, it's much slower, it's much more measured, getting feedback and approvals is slower. Whereas, we work with Israeli clients that are marketing to the US predominantly. It's, as you say, it's everything yesterday and then some, and it's so fast paced. So you can imagine that adjusting to working like that is very, very difficult for teams here.
Yeah, and I also find, I wonder who's it harder for, do you think? Do you think it's harder for the Israelis to be able to work with an American team that moves at their pace? Or do you find it's harder for Americans to try to understand and comprehend the Israeli team?
Oh, good question. I think I think both teams suffer. I don't think anybody's enjoying this relationship. It's no good.
I also think what happens is that they tend to move from agency to agency. What I hear a lot, and you can probably all relate, is, well, we've tried working with a social media agency before and it hasn't worked for us. And it's not that it hasn't worked for them. They're just working with the wrong agency or the wrong team. So
Right. Yeah, well, what do you think are the main things when, let's say, you're looking at account? How would you define a wrong team in that context?
Oh, a wrong team. Sorry.
I mean, I think you already hit the nail on the head. It's understanding, having that closeness to the product teams and the management, and understanding their mentality and how they work. Because, as I said, although you're marketing overseas, and you need to understand the target market 100%, but you also need to understand the team that you're working the closest with to get the work done. And there's a disconnect, a total disconnect. So not only in the right time zone by being here and being able to work in their time zone, you're able to work with their mentality. And that is where magic happens. Because if you understand the US markets, you understand how to do marketing outside of Israel, then you understand the mentality and get the work done, then that's when things happen. Do you agree?
Yeah, totally. But I think there's also like this frustration on the Israeli team side with regards to like feeling like a small fish in a big pond. So a lot of the agencies overseas, they're dealing with huge budgets, right? In the millions of dollars, the hundreds of thousands of dollars, and not every tech company that wants to market overseas has that kind of budget. Definitely not the startups, even the more established startups. So it's often sort of like they're not getting the attention that they would get from a more local agency, because they're US or UK based agency, they're small fish. This Israeli company is a small fish for them. So that's also leads to a lot of frustration. Whereas obviously with a local agency, that doesn't tend to happen so much.
Yeah, the other thing I noticed also about local agencies when it comes to abroad, not here, is that most of their clientele, let's say, unlike ours, is like all of our clientele is overwhelmingly B2B tech startups. And many of them, even if they're focusing on tech, because let's say just American in California, they're overwhelmingly B2C. So when you try to, when the marketing process is so much longer, when the sales cycle is so long, they don't understand how to properly message at the different stages. They don't understand how to create a proper funnel. They don't understand how to make something, make campaigns and actually understand the audience. They're taking their expertise and their understanding from the B2C tech, and they're trying to apply it to the B2B tech. And it's a whole nother brain. And I'm sure you guys are familiar when you want to hire someone and I was like, oh, their experience looks perfect if only you change the word Facebook in their CV from LinkedIn. And there's so many of those even here in Israel, is that even the overwhelming majority of marketers are B2C. Like over 95% of Google Ads revenue are B2C companies, not B2B companies. I think it's even more than that. So when you bring in these, let's say from an advertising perspective, and I'm sure for organic too, when you bring in that expertise, it's very different. Also B2C products that are often more physical and tangible. And so you can probably talk about this from the organic and social perspective. It's a lot easier, and it's a totally different strategy of who your audience is. And when you actually have a physical product you can market, right? So there's more you can do with design and messaging, and it's more applicable to mass market because it's B2C, and you don't get that from the B2B space. I don't know if you had anything familiar with that, but there's a really good challenge here. If anyone wants to add anything, if not, then I'll switch gears to a question from
It's funny you say that, because I've always said B2C is actually harder because it's on the organic side. It's much, much more creative, and you can make it, but people don't necessarily come. So you're putting in a lot of effort, for that very little initial feedback and return. But something you said there was really interesting, Yoel, because when you talk about these agencies in the US, there's so many of them. I mean, the US is huge.
Right.
And so you actually, you might be taking a risk. It's much harder to vet which one will be a good or the right fit for you. Whereas here in Israel, there aren't that many of us. We have reputations. We have people we've worked with previously, and it's much easier to vet and know which are the good agencies to work with and which ones aren't.
You're a WhatsApp away. Yeah, you're a WhatsApp away from getting opinions about the agency, and and asking like anybody in your community.
That can go both ways, because we
absolutely. That works all around.
You can totally mess up as well,
Yeah, absolutely. Not one agency suits all, as they say.
Oh, that's correct. That's correct. And even personalities within an agency, you have to have the right project manager too.
Exactly.
Running into personality issues is a challenge I've been familiar with. Chaim Simcha has a very good question here. So this is right. Israeli agencies, how would they be able to better understand if it's an Israeli company? Let's say even if we take all of the pros that we say is true, which if anyone wants to challenge them, please do. We'll prioritize those questions. How are we going to be able? How are we going to be better to target our audience in America better than those that are in America themselves? Don't they get to know the culture? We know the culture of the company better. That's a given. But don't they know the culture of the people that we're trying to target if they're in the States?
Can I take this first?
Yeah, sure.
My entire team is Anglo.
Likewise.
Canadian, American, Australian, British.
Yeah. Likewise.
You know, I don't see any reason why we would be able to not market in the US because we've moved to a different country.
We also have the
marketing
years of experience.
is marketing.
Yeah, you have the years of experience also that basically, you know, you've run these campaigns, you've launched these products in the US so many times that you know what's likely to work, what isn't likely to work. And again, there is no golden rule, but you've got this experience under your belt and you know from previous experience. But yeah, having the expats on your team, that's how every agency in Israel that's facing out runs today.
But I also say, Billy, that sorry to interrupt you, Yor, but I always say when a client says to me, you know, are you a cybersecurity expert? I'm like, no, but I'm not a vegan either, and I can market veganism. I don't need to be an expert at being a vegan. I love my meat, but I know how to market to a vegan person, and that's the difference. That once you learn a profession, you are a professional in that expertise. So it shouldn't really matter.
And I think Israelis have the highest proportion of vegans. I think like in the world outside of that are for non-Hindu countries. So I think we can. And I live in Pardes Chana where there's plenty of vegans, so I'm very familiar with that. I'm actually gonna go another. You guys, I agree, right? Our team is overwhelmingly Olim or have lived in the States or abroad. But I'm gonna take it like a step further. I want to take Chaim's logic and I want to add to it. Is that so? He has a good argument there. But I don't know why you think the marketing agencies in, let's say, the States, I'm choosing States as an example, of course, you can fill in any Anglo country. I don't know why you think they would understand their target audience. I mean, if you're targeting cybersecurity professionals, I think us being in the network around cybersecurity companies, as we'll be attending CyberTech in Tel Aviv next week and beginning of March, and none of them are going to attend any cyber event, cyber tech events or anything like that in San Francisco or anything. We understand our target audience far better, even though that they're in the States. Even if I was Israeli and I've never stepped foot outside of Israel, I would be far better understand the technical challenges of cybersecurity professionals than the young digital marketers over in the States. Even if they have the B2B experience in their B2B marketing agency and they have they don't have any B2C in their portfolio, they're still going to be able, I still feel that they don't know how to they don't know how to target their market because they're so disconnected from it. But we're living and breathing everything we're reading in the newspaper. I mean, if you pull up the Jerusalem Post, they'll say, you know, cybersecurity raised, you know, X amount of dollars last quarter. You're not gonna read Israeli cyber companies. You're not gonna read in any of the American newspapers how much money was raised, you know, in the cybersecurity or AI or anything like that. But here on our regular newspapers and Ynet, you know, we're seeing it everywhere and everything. So we're living and breathing tech. We're living and breathing AI. We're living and breathing cybersecurity and big data processing and MarTech more than even those people. And we understand the target audience far better, even if our target audience is abroad. And if you would have never stepped out of Israel, I think we actually have a far, far, far better. And I think even though that they're in America, they don't understand it. They don't know how to speak to their audience at all because they have no connection to them.
Yeah, I'd even go a step further, saying that actually our proximity, our closeness to actually understanding the product, right? So the R&D team, the tech team are actually in Israel. So the Israeli agency is constantly speaking to the technical people. We've got plenty of examples, like basically that the companies understand that the product understanding and the product is key now for marketing. There's so much noise out there that a marketer that doesn't understand the product can't market it well enough. There's no room for fluff. And, you know, therefore, because the product teams are in Israel, having the marketers with the product teams, and that's the way most companies are running their marketing ships right now, is actually the huge advantage.
Right. So we have the best of both worlds. This LinkedIn user is Chaviva Karen. I see it's not pulling up. She's saying, which is why enlisting Olim is huge. So
Yep.
I think maybe we'll throw something out there. If you know, Olim means people that are immigrants to Israel. If you know anyone that's looking to immigrate to Israel and that wants to get into marketing, we're very open. Feel free to connect them to one of the three of us. We would, if you're looking for any kind of employment, especially if you're starting out young, Anglos is a great way to. I think it's a really fantastic thing that we can do. We can help people that move here and help immigrants.
Yep.
Gemma put the comment here. I want to pull up that B2B should be creative too, though. Zoe, you want to speak on that?
Yeah, it absolutely is. But it's a different type of creative. Like, let's be honest, you know, a B2B brand that's trying to do TikTok like a B2C brand on TikTok is just going to look silly. I can't remember there's a cyber company that keep doing these great videos with one of their researchers, and you know, they see him eating his cereal and then he gets up and he starts to explain the complex new threat that's out there, and it's really engaging and it's really fun. That is one creative level, and it should be creative, but it's not the same speed, it's not the same level of creative that B2C needs. It's just I'm telling you that from experience. But yeah. There's also the world of influencers. The world of influence is much, much bigger for B2C. So you have to know how to work with influencers and how to do influencer marketing. It's like a whole different ballgame.
It's literally a whole different thing. Yeah. All right. Ron says, let's see, find an amazing agency in the US. Still, the question is, should the marketing team be, quote, closer? He's talking geographically, right, to the product or closer to the customer and salespeople? Billy, what are your thoughts?
I'm obviously biased. I've just seen this happen too many times. Honestly, I say that again. It's closer to the product. You can still have a sales team. You obviously have your sales team in the US, and as long as there's good communication between the sales and the marketing is supporting the sales and the stuff that they need to get through the door and to make sales easier for them, basically, then there's absolutely no reason why marketing shouldn't stay in Israel. And we're seeing it. Like, look at all the companies that have raised money. In the past, like 2 years ago, before the pandemic, the minute a company would raise money, the VP of marketing would be, you know, shaking in his or her boots, because they know that the next step is going to be to hire the CMO in the US and ship all the marketing to the US predominantly. And then they're out of a job unless they're willing to relocate. And more now, you know, marketing teams are being built in Israel because they realize that the proximity to the product teams, the proximity and the closeness to the product teams and understanding the product, again, are the key. Absolutely.
I think you also got to ask, who are you marketing? Are you marketing the product, or are you marketing the CEO, you know, the salespeople? So I think, of course, you want to... Right. So sometimes both, right? Especially for you, because you do social and you do organic for LinkedIn profiles.
A lot of executive.
Right. You do a lot of executive. Right. So then,
because again, you can still have field marketers in the US, and you should have field marketers in the US. But with regards to the agency, there's absolutely no reason for that to be checked.
What I've seen with a few of our clients, where they have taken most of the team and for good reasons decided to keep social with us because we are good with them, and also normally because we do that executive thought leadership, so we're very close to the executives here in their time zone. They take most of the rest of their marketing operations overseas, and the flow of information gets broken. The blog doesn't go up, or it goes up, we don't get the link, and that flow completely dies, and it takes a long time to get back into that schwung of flow of information and things running smoothly. Sometimes it doesn't happen. They just bring everything, as Billy said, back here. And that's been our experience as well. And it's a very costly and very expensive lesson to learn, to take everything somewhere else and then have to bring it all back again.
Yeah, there's one large cybersecurity company that shall not be mentioned, that every 12 to 18 months basically shipped their PPC budgets from Israel, being managed in Israel, to being managed in the US. And then there's another change, or that they're not getting the results they need, and then they ship it back to Israel. Every 12 to 18 months, we're having the same discussions with this company, and it's amazing. It's like we're running into the like 5th or 6th year that this is happening, and it's not necessarily because of a change in the leadership. It's they're constantly being disappointed or expecting to receive something else And it's like, and I think it's a lot of politics as well, internal politics that keep on shifting the budgets from the US being managed by the US team to the Israeli team.
Let's talk about the politics, because I think what I've learned is, guys did say, you think, okay, there's logic behind it, like most decisions, and then you find out, the powers that be, people are trying to pull, like, oh, when my brother-in-law has an agency here, or this and that, or I've worked at this. So let's talk about the politics. Bill, you're starting on that. What do you think? How much of a role do you think the politics plays? And to an extent, I mean, we can't ignore politics. That's why you brought it up, right? It is a factor.
Yeah.
Are there any politics that should be addressed? And are there any politics that you think that should be certain politics should be avoided altogether when it comes to making a decision?
So as an agency, we try to ignore the internal company politics within our clients. We try to ignore them for as long as possible. But at some point, we generally need to have that conversation with the client. Because if one team, like a lot of times we're working with the US team and the Israeli team, and you can see that there's a complete disconnect. Often because we're the agency in Israel, again, far closer to the headquarters, far closer to the product team, far closer to the R&D team. We know a lot of stuff that's going on and a lot of the decisions and why the decisions are being made far more than the American team. And the American team also feel threatened by that. They realize that stuff's going down in Israel, and the fact that they're so far away means that they're getting less involved and are being kept in the dark. So obviously we try to run away from it as much as possible, but there is a point where you really need to address the elephant in the room, because it impacts your every single aspect of performance and communication, obviously. So it's one of the tough ones that nobody likes to handle, but there becomes a point, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
How about you? What have you experienced?
Well, I think, I mean, I'm very similar to what you're saying. But I think one of the things companies need to take into account is that we say things sometimes as logic and sometimes it's emotional, and sometimes the politics isn't even conscious. I find it's often it's subconscious. And I think sometimes when people make suggestions on where and whom to hire, I think and if it's someone you trust within your team, we're all human and we all sometimes suggest things using maybe, let's say, our lizard brain. I think what you need to do is do a little bit of trust and verify, is kind of trust their suggestion, and you really need to dig into why. And I think you need to ask, what's your connection? What's the reason? And ask the opposite. Why not do the opposite? I find, and because you need to get clarity into the reasoning of why people are making suggestions of where they should hire the next team member, whether it's full-time in-house or an agency, or what are the decisions that they need to make. I think they need to be able to get the proper clarity is important. There's a big comment here from Nikki Ralston. 10 to 20 years ago, Israeli startup marketing teams succeeded. We lost our jobs to the US.
Yep.
From what I can see, this trend is changing in Israeli startups and VCs. It's usually investors leading this decision. I think that's going to be the focus in this conversation here. Speaking of politics, actually, recognize all the advantages of Israeli-led dominant marketing.
Yep.
All
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
No, that's precisely what I was saying a couple of minutes ago. The minute that, once upon a time, only 2 years ago, receiving a funding round would equal jobs being lost in Israel or shipped to the US. And it really isn't happening that way anymore.
Right, Waze. I don't know if you guys remember this. So when Waze was looking to sell, they're doing a little bidding between Facebook and Google, and one of their non-negotiables was that the team must stay here in Israel, and that
including the marketing.
Yes, and therefore Facebook withdrew their, I want to say including the marketing, I can't say 100%, but I believe so, but I know all the development and everything, that there'll be no relocations. And therefore Facebook actually withdrew their offer to purchase. And they ended up, going with Google. Google already had a big base here, and they just added another 4 floors in their tower, and they just moved offices. So I think, and that was longer. It was a while ago. It was 7 years. I don't know. I'm losing track of time, but more. Yeah, really? Right. Okay. So, yeah. So I have no idea anymore. But just to say that, because when I think it was Nikki was saying 10 to 20 years ago, and I think you're just already starting to see it. I think that was a big turning point when you have such a big name, big company being acquired for about $1 billion to say, no, we're going to keep our team here. I think it gave the room for other companies that were going to have an exit to also have the strength and courage and say, just like Waze, it's important to them to continue to build Waze, to keep the same teams, and what led to our success, to continue to grow that success here in Israel. Why are you going to take what's working and ruining it because you have control issues? And I think that's kind of the same thing. And it goes to having your team near you in America, whether they want to have a marketing thing, it's a control issue. I want my salesperson, often you see this with founders that do have to go abroad to do some sales and to maybe be near investors. They do to temporarily relocate. They do want sales to be with them. It is lonely being there. I do empathize with it. But you have to keep in mind that what might be good for you personally and easier for the communication, especially when it has to do the difference of 7 hours in a time zone, if you're talking East Coast, what you're finding is that it's actually not best for your team to continue to work independently in order to have a well-run business. They need to work in all the other departments need to be able to work and continue to grow independently of you. And if you bring them closer to you, you're actually taking a step back business-wise, because you're making them become even more dependent on you if you bring them over to where you are, because you want them to be close to you. And the exact opposite should be the goal. The goal should be that the marketing department and the sales, ideally, should be as independent and a machine that's working and self-sustaining on its own. And I think bringing it close to you for that reason, for your geographical reasons, then it means that you actually might have an actual problem in your business structure.
Yep.
I know that was a long thing.
No, but I mean, only like Cisco purchased a couple of companies over the past couple of years. And again, instead of shipping them overseas, they're actually increasing their marketing budgets in Israel. So, we're doing all their content for them. We thought that we would have to part ways, and we're like, hey, they're giving us more content from other regions even.
Fantastic.
So yeah, I'm really happy to see this, obviously a positive change.
I don't know about you guys, but I can certainly attest to the fact that we are growing also with US-based clients, not afraid to work with Israeli agencies because of our reputation working with these big companies that market and are globally strong. So, that for us is a plus as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is a good point. I'll share a story. I had a client that got connected through a friend in America, had no connection in Israel, not low tech, but a big B2B company in Denver. And we hit it off with the guy that connected it because it was a mutual connection. And then he left and they brought in someone new, and she's like, where's Israel? Stereotypical American. And we thought, generally bringing a marketer that you have no connection with and 9 hours behind, she was in mountain time. But we thought, okay, we'll probably assume, she'll probably bring in someone else she wants. She's had a lot of experience. And she actually ended up working with her for a while. After 2 months, there's another team doing their Facebook, and she sent this huge brief for a new campaign, and we already started working on it. This goes back to what you guys were saying earlier about our sense of urgency. And they said they haven't even opened the brief, and it's been 2 business days for their American agency that was only 1 hour behind them in California, and we've already started writing up copy and started moving on it. And I think that's because that's how that's how our overwhelming majority of clients that are here in Israel, they expect that turnaround. They expect you to start working on it. They expect you to start writing up copy and spreadsheets or whatever it is, and expect them to come back with some draft within 24 hours. And there it's like, oh, they didn't even get to it. Let me take my time. Let me churn you for another month of pretending to work.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a stereotypical example. Vadim says, I think that one of our, this goes back to earlier, is the combination of Anglos, because we were talking about culture, and native Israelis. That gives a better way of understanding. So this kind of goes a little bit to what we were saying, that we want to be, I was touching on earlier, is what are you marketing? The product? Like, where do you want to be close to? Is that teams need to work together. And sometimes that might mean the marketing and sales team, and sometimes it might mean actually culturally, we need people to work, you need the different cultures to come together. So being able to have even Israelis on our team, not only Anglos, is able to bridge that gap between the messaging, the targeting, and understanding the psychology of the American enterprise, such as ones I've worked at, like Morgan Stanley and Xerox, and as opposed to the Israelis that actually better understand the product, how things need to be moved and pushed, and the personality and the culture of the founders. So there is a bridge there that agencies such as ours are able to provide.
It's also, we're speaking a lot about the US market, but there is a whole world out there that's beyond the US. And more of our clients as well, are not actually starting in the US, or they want to, explore other regions other than the US. And a US agency finds that far more difficult to do also than an Israeli-based agency, no doubt about it. Okay? The US-based agency, they've got experience with their region, and they might have affiliates in different countries, but you're going to have to be working with separate agencies at the end of the day to do that. Whereas within an Israeli local agency, they can all happen under one roof, basically.
Guys, I see your questions. We're going to address them. Feel free to keep asking them and putting them in there. I'm trying to pick them in the order of our conversation flow. So don't worry. I see some older ones too, and we'll address them. Yeah, Zoe?
I actually saw an interesting question. I don't know if you can pull it up from Yisrael Siegel.
Yoel, but some agencies. I'm not there yet. This one?
Yes. Specific stages. Different agencies can work in different stages, but that's true for anything, whether it's here or whether it's in the US. You know, I get companies coming to me at very, very early stage startups that are just not ready for us yet. And I get others that come to us and we're not ready for them. You know, but I know who to send them to. It's not in that situation. It's not necessarily a question of Israel or outside of Israel. It's more who is the right fit within Israel to get your job done. And they exist. They are here. You just need to be matched up.
But often when companies grow, even the board will kick out the founder because there's, you know, you're good at founding an app for one stage, and just because you're good for one stage is because it's not. And when a client may get too big or too enterprise and whatever, and they decide to build their own marketing team basically in-house, that's actually a success when they do that, because there's an age and a stage for everything. And in order to bring marketing in-house, you shouldn't have, this is now I'm going to go very strong opinions here, is that you should not hire in-house if you just hire experts. Let's say, I'm just going to talk ads or SEO, if you just have one or two people, because you're going to need someone to actually double check the work. Now you have to fire the person and then you need to find someone else. Meanwhile, your accounts are suffering, or you need to go find out an agency to replace them and they're going to want to redo everything because they suck. Or how do you know that they're sucking? Maybe you're just doing really well because you're in a hot industry and there's some systematical, you know, in the industry is doing very well and very hot, and that's lifting all boats. And you think maybe the acquisition team or the SEO team is doing great, but it has nothing to do with it, and they're just riding a wave. And you really have no way of knowing that and checking that. And so if you're going to build a team, make sure you have the proper budgets and capacity to build a large team with a full structure. So there's accountability. People have different strengths. Not everyone's the best at different platforms. Some people are more technical, some people are strategical in the ads, some people are better at copywriting, some people are A/B testing. And those are the advantages of having a team or working with an agency. So if you're just going to bring one person in-house, you're not going to get any of those things. You're going to get a couple of those, 20% of what you had working with an agency. So make sure if you do bring it in-house, my suggestion is do it when you're ready to hire a team of people in-house in order just to do one thing, so they have the collaboration and you can bring together different strengths. And then if one decides to move on, or if they're a failure, it doesn't screw up your whole marketing. You have other people to fill in until you replace that hire.
Totally agree with that. I'd say go a step further and say make sure that you outsource your weakness, right? So if you know that you've got a good sort of like inbound and SEO and social team, then outsource your PPC. If you know that you're stuck with you're not very good with marketing operations, then outsource that bit, get the specialists in through the door. Because that's where your pain is, and that's where you need to get sort of like the immediate relief. And that's where you'll feel the most benefit as well.
Yeah.
I'm going to agree with you guys. You know, this is one of our biggest selling points when you hire a social media agency like us. You're not getting one person, you're getting an entire team of people. You've got the people writing, the people engaging, the people doing graphics. If you hire someone to do your social media, they're still going to need to work with your design team, and that's a burden on your design team, and they might not have the copywriting experience or the analytical experience, and that's a burden on someone else. So you actually need to spread their work over multiple people within your organization, and that the only thing I do disagree with you, Billy, in some instances is that can also be a burden for big companies where there are too many people and no one with the specialist, the expertise that they need. So we work a lot with really, really big clients where they're like, we have a lot of marketers. We have a team of 50 marketers, but none of them really, really know this very, very well. So we want to work with an agency who just...
So they're outsourcing a weakness. So that's, absolutely.
Yeah, I just wanted, there's some comments here. There people having conversations in the chat. So Ella says it's a strong point to keep marketing close to product. I know we mentioned that people talk about bringing marketing close to sales and the CEO, and I think that's exactly backwards.
You're missing the most important comment there, that somebody's saying that they are wearing their favorite shirt.
Who is? Yeah, it came as his LinkedIn. Who was that? Thank you. I'm actually just lost in the comments. I'm not going to lie right now because there's a great discussion, but they're not necessarily questions. So keep them up. I'll be able to pull them up. Some people are funny. Okay. What are the industries that Israel is better in marketing than others? Zoe, why don't you start this? What do you think?
Yes and no. I know that's not a very definitive answer. By default, because there are a lot of tech startups here in the cyber, AI, computational computing, deep learning, machine learning space, we have become known and are very good at it by default. Where I see a weakness is in, consumer brands and e-commerce.
Right.
And in that instance, I understand why a lot of companies here are looking to foreign agencies to get that experience, because we get a lot. I can tell you from my experience, I get a lot more people knocking on my door who are coming from the B2B tech. And that doesn't mean we don't do e-commerce or B2C. It's just become more of our expertise. And it's really hard to do both at the same time. It's different skills, different people, different platforms. LinkedIn is a whole different beast to TikTok. So I think that there is a really big space for experts here in Israel to build a niche for themselves on the B2C side. But there's no doubt that cyber, AI, deep learning, machine learning, IoT, fintech, biotech, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, all the big buzzwords at the moment, the metaverse. Hands up if you actually know what the metaverse is.
I'm hosting. I'll share now. I'm planning a LinkedIn local Tel Aviv in the metaverse in March. So I have no that I'm trying to prepare. So get ready for it.
I do think that that's become by default our expertise and where we're the strongest.
So I want to be consistent with, and I'm not saying whether you have been in your answer, but I think there's a consistency to what we're saying here about, and with the last comment about keeping marketing close to product. Whatever Israel's dominant and strong is, that is why Israeli marketers are better at. So like you said, cybersecurity, AI, fintech, great. If you need to market, cleaning products to America, you know what I mean? Or if you're selling water bottles, I'm just looking at the random staplers, the random things on my desk. These are the things that you'd be better off hiring an American agency and not choosing an Israeli agency, because they are also using their products as much closer to them. We're much closer to the product. We read about them. It's in our LinkedIn newsfeed all the time. It's in our regular news all the time, talking about it. It's in our business news. That's all they're talking about. In America, the business news always talks about the stock market. I don't hear anyone ever talking about the stock market here. The Tel Aviv stocks are nothing. It's always about the startups and the tech and the culture. So if you're a startup and if you're high tech, then you should work with Israelis 100%. And if it's something that Israel doesn't have a strong industry in, then Israelis wouldn't be your right choice. And you may very well and very likely to find a better agency elsewhere.
Yep, totally agree with that.
Awesome. I say if anyone wants a shirt, you can send me a message on LinkedIn and I'll get it mailed to you. Is there any comments you guys want to pull up? I literally got lost in my comments, but Shoal has a good comment here. In B2B, the Israeli companies are early adapters, so we actually have more practical experience. So you're nodding strongly. What's up?
I think that's true. We jump into a much more community-minded mentality of sharing information. And I'll just give one example. There is an Israeli company that has a social media tool, and I find my relationship with them and how we work together, me as an agency using their tool and them as a company developing the tool, is totally different to a similar tool that I'm using that is not developed here. I really struggle to get just the most basic customer support and things done, and it's really painful. So yeah, we have this, let's adopt, let's change, let's pivot with them, let's help them succeed, and they're going to help us succeed. And there is a very strong sense of that. I feel that also amongst the agencies, the fact that we're all here, we're not competitors, we're partners. And although Billy definitely has a lot of overlap with the work that I do, and you and I have some overlap, we also all work together. So I think that fits also into that cultural sense of community.
I think that another thing that I find that differentiates the Israeli agencies from the agencies overseas is our need. It's like we have we need to quench the thirst of like trying A/B testing and trying new technologies all the time. Like it's very common, like for the agencies to just be like, let's test this. We want to run this. Let's test that. And there's a new technology coming out. Yalla, let's try it. I don't find that with the foreign agencies, and that's another feedback that we get from our clients as well. Is that we're constantly pushing and trying new things in order to sort of like try and break boundaries, so to speak. Which is, it's really, I think it comes again from our culture of being part of the startup nation. There are always things coming out. It's like, oh yeah, I really want to try that out. Which client can I try that out on? Yeah, great. And that's something that's very much missing from the more, established agencies overseas that are not in that, environment day in, day out.
Mm-hmm.
I've taken that one level further. If I can't find a tool I need, we create it, we develop it.
Amazing.
We created 2 or 3 tools that we could be out selling to other agencies. They're that good, but at the moment we're just using them for ourselves just to make our job easier and better. So that innovation and startup nation mentality is working with, for us as well.
Incredible.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's why we built Cyfluencer for cyber influencer marketing. And this is relevant because top tools you recommend working with in international markets, I assume she meant. I think that they're the same tools that you would be working in domestic markets. I think the only thing is the culture and the time zones are really the main differences when you're working in international markets. Do you think there are any kind of tools that one should specifically embrace or avoid when working internationally for our clients? I feel that any tool I mention here, and I mention to American clients, I'm not getting any kind of, oh, what's that? Or why are you using that? Why aren't you using this?
No, I agree with that. Yeah.
I think the key is adaptability. We get clients where they're using a tool that we don't use. We have to use it. They want to be in Monday, we're in Monday. They want us to be in ClickUp, we're in ClickUp. They want us to be on Slack, we're in Slack. They want WhatsApp, we're in WhatsApp. It's that adaptability and ability to just, go with the flow. That's what differentiates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If anyone has any more questions, feel free to drop them. So I want to take this conversation and get actually a little more specific. And if anyone has objections and disagreements, especially please bring those up. We had a couple of those early on. I'm finding that in addition to one, where the team is being located should be closer to marketing. We've covered that. Kind of want to come up with a short list here. We're also finding that people working on the advertising and marketing, let's say accounts in the States, have no understanding of not just B2B and B2B tech, but longer marketing and sales cycle. I did a live with a debate live a few years ago with Chris Walker, because he does B2B and he has a very famous podcast. And we were having a debate, and at one point, to his credit, he goes, I think we're going in circles. And we found that he was pushing more, let's say, Facebook ads for B2B, and I'm pushing LinkedIn ads for B2B. He says Facebook's better. I'm saying LinkedIn's better. And it was a debate, and at one point we were in circles, and we came to the understanding that we have 2 totally different target audience. He's talking about, oh yeah, we got the coach from the Kansas City Chiefs. It's a big football team in America. I was like, I've never ever targeted anyone at any football, before. And then I came to notice that he's talking about more mass market B2B, maybe what you might use for your accounting software or things like that. So he's able to use Facebook and get those really cheap cost per clicks. And even though he might only be able to hit 25% of his audience, not all of them, it's better from a cost per lead or a cost per sale, and more SaaS related. And here, many of our clients are, well, not just SaaS, but much longer sales cycle. And we're targeting, like the Forbes 100 often, and the C-suite, or those that report directly to under them. We need to make sure that they see the messaging, and you find out that this is the experience that we have in our targeting and our messaging. And a lot of the American agencies, especially the leading ones, including, let's say, Chris Walker's, that their expertise, their experience is very, very, very different from ours. Not that theirs is worse or wrong or better, it's just different fit. That we're not mass market, we're very highly targeted, extremely technical. So from my experience, when I looked over at messaging from an American agency trying to run something to a high tech company is that it's very much like very B2C, very like very personable and not technical. So they're getting these click throughs, but then no one's converting because it might sound shiny, but it's not technical in their ad copy or in their messaging. For example, Billy, I know you have a lot of opinions on messaging and copywriting, so I definitely want to hear what you have to say. And then I also know when you get to like, if they use lead gen forms and things, it kind of like, it's very not like, there's no like pain points, very like, oh, fill this out to learn that. There's no education involved. There's no any kind of, sorry, thought leadership, involved in any of the ad messaging or anything that would get, hey, you never heard of our company and we're asking for, $500,000 probably in your money a year to use our product. And why don't hey, download this and show up for a demo. And I'm like in this messaging and this whole thought process and the whole targeting is so backwards and crooked that their whole messaging is off. Billy, what do you think about the messaging?
So taking a step back with regards to even mass B2B marketing, I think that over the past 2 years as well, sort of like the whole, just casting a wide net and marketing within target groups on LinkedIn and stuff, that's all sort of like changing as well. We've been speaking about ABM marketing for years, but now companies are like, we need to embrace ABM marketing, and you can't get more niche and you can't get more specific than doing those sort of like real ABM campaigns that are way beyond just uploading a targeted list on LinkedIn. It's like measuring based on engagement, making sure that every step of the funnel, they're getting the right content in front of them and measuring touch points and da. So the whole messaging needs to be so precise and so on point. And there's a world of difference between sort of like messaging for, you've got so many cybersecurity companies out there selling their products, and how do you stand out? You just need to be so creative in order to stand out. You need to have the huevos to actually say something different that will make you stand out. That's for the top of the funnel stuff that people even to get on their radar. But then the messaging again needs to be so on point when you're doing ABM marketing, and you really need to understand your product and your persona in order to make it relevant and in order for ABM marketing to actually work. But that's where the market's going. It's already there. I don't know why it took so long to get there, but obviously it's, one of the reasons because so much money has been burned and spent, and companies are just realizing that there's no point anymore. They usually, for those B2B tech products, they know precisely which companies they're good for. They know precisely which ones they want to be targeting. They know the 5 decision makers in that company because we have the tools nowadays that enable us to know. So let's go after them. And that's the approach nowadays, and messaging is a huge part of that. So the Chris Walkers of the world have definitely got a place, but not what we're dealing with right now with the clients.
Right, not high tech.
Yeah.
Can I throw a spanner in that works, because it's not something that we've brought up, but we do a lot of recruitment, social recruitment. And we see the same trend there, although people are on Facebook and Instagram, and we can target them much more cheap, much cheaper, with different messages or with the same messages. When we track it properly and when we see the results of what happens on LinkedIn, the candidates that are getting interviews and passing interviews are coming from LinkedIn. They are not coming from Facebook, and they're not coming from Instagram. So Instagram and Facebook are great for brand awareness. And that's the difference between top funnel and bottom funnel. So B2B companies need to take that into account. Facebook's a great place to have your pixel installed on your website, measure where all the traffic's coming from, and then do retargeting just to keep getting more touch points and get more brand awareness. It's not necessarily the place you want to be. And Yoel and Billy, you can agree or disagree with me. It's not the place you might want to be for that good quality lead generation. Whether it's for recruiting candidates or whether it's for bringing in potential customers. And that's been our experience as well. We need to take that into account when planning campaigns.
I'd say on the whole, our experience with Facebook has been the same, but there are a couple of clients that their target audience is definitely more on Facebook than on LinkedIn, even though it's a tech product. And that's been but those are the exceptions to the rules. By and large, yes, the traction from Google and from LinkedIn far outweighs Facebook.
Amazing. Okay, great. So I think we should maybe kind of sum up, and it would be a huge wasted opportunity for people if maybe we just don't talk about some general marketing trends beyond why they should keep their marketing in Israel. View the three best, I think, tech marketing agencies in Israel and in B2B high tech, I honestly believe in the world we have here. So I think it would be a disservice to people. So maybe we can kind of recap why you think, like maybe 2 or 3 main reasons why you an Israeli, I would say the same thing, by the way, for American B2B tech companies that Israel's strong on, also should be working with Israelis. But for Israeli tech companies, why they should keep their marketing in Israel. Maybe we can do a couple recaps, and then I see some comments about how to target you. I see comments about marketing in general, following your audience, should be on TikTok. I think we should address all these things. They're fun. If anyone has any generic comments about marketing in general, feel free to drop them and we'll address them. But why don't we start first, Zoe? Why don't we kind of why we came here? What do you think are the main reasons that you think Israeli tech companies should keep their marketing here?
I think we understand how to work with the people that are closest to the success of the company. That pretty much sums it up. And we can go into all the little minuscule details again, but the people who ensure the success of the company, who started it, who run it, who raise the funds, who bring it to market, they're based here. And they culturally are very, very, very different. So that's my main reason.
Agreed. Yeah, I would say that, and also the speed elements, and the fact that we're just sort of like on it, yalla yalla, as I said earlier. I think that's definitely sort of like part of the mentality and what the companies need in order to succeed in their campaigns.
And I'll add in addition, the speed I think is the main cultural aspect, one, but also I think really understanding how, since all of our clients are targeting very similar people or very technical executives or VPs in large enterprises in the States, we have that experience to use that messaging and understand the long marketing and sales cycle. We don't come with any biases of B2C or mass market B2B or things like that you're getting biases that need to be unlearned when you're working with those agencies. You're going to work backwards. Everything's going to move slower. Your messaging will be poor. Your funnel will be upside down. They don't understand the proper nurturing that's necessary from all the marketing channels in order to properly, not just to get someone to fill out a lead, but to get them to ask for a demo and show up to a demo, and how to properly nurture them while they speak to sales. And these are the things that we work very closely with, because we work very closely with founders who are also the salespeople here in Israel. We're very close to them, and we live it and we breathe it, and it's literally all we know. And you shouldn't come to us for e-commerce, and the same reason why you shouldn't go, if you're a high-tech company, take it over to America. Even if they say they have that experience, you'll find that the majority of their clients they're currently serving have nothing to do, and the psychology is absolutely upside down compared to what your Israeli company needs when you go to consider bringing your marketing abroad.
Absolutely.
With that, let's take some marketing questions. Okay, I'm seeing some. This is huge. That's a great comment. Cultural understanding is important. Yeah. Okay. So TikTok. Gemma says. Zoe knows I have very strong opinions on TikTok. I'll curb my enthusiasm. Just commenting to someone else earlier. It's important to know where your target market is. They're on TikTok, you should be there. If not, maybe you shouldn't. Just a thought. So what are your thoughts on, let's say if your target audience is on TikTok, do you think, and we're talking from B2B tech only, right? We're not talking in general, so that we can use a stereotypical cybersecurity or AI client. Do you think you should be marketing on TikTok? Billy, go ahead. What do you think?
I believe in marketing anywhere where my target audience is. I've yet to be proven that the audience is on TikTok. It might be in the future. I doubt it, but I don't see it there right now.
Yeah, I agree, and I kind of disagree, because I used to say this about Facebook, because a lot of people used to say, you know, the CEO of a cyber company or a CISO is not on Facebook, and I'm like, yes, they are.
Yes,
because
they
they're
are.
there to connect with their family and to share their pictures of their dog and their cat. And if they see an article that's relevant to them while they're sitting with their Sunday paper and their cup of coffee, they might click on it and read it. So, and I still believe that, and I believe it about TikTok, but it's a totally different world. And I think, again, it comes back to what I was saying about the recruitment. They're seeing it, they're engaging with it. You get way more reach and way more visibility, but that's brand awareness. So as long as you define the goal of what you're doing on TikTok as more brand awareness, and if it brings you a couple of leads and they're good leads, great. But it's not the main thing. The other thing I'll say about it is that And this is an experience we have with, you know, the companies that we're working right up to C and D rounds of funding, is that they cannot be everywhere at once really well. And if they diversify too quickly and try to be everywhere and try to be as creative as you want to be, because it's not the matter of taking the same post and putting it on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram and TikTok. You can't do that. On Instagram right now, you've got to think about reels, and you've got to think about stories, and you've got to think about, you know, the feed, and that's 3 different types of content. So if you're creating 3 types of content just for one platform, and then you have 6 other platforms to think about, you need a team of 12 people. You know, it's not 3 people. And you know, we've just had this now with one of our clients. They have a physical device, and if we want to do fun TikToks and fun reels, we need the device. We need to actually, I used to work with a company where I had their machine in my office, so that every day I could be tweeting you know, a picture of something with their machine. That it's like a whole other level of engagement with the products, as well as, you know, the platform.
Content creation for that. Yeah, exactly. It's a content creation nightmare. It's a big overhead.
Now I get to rain on everyone's parade. I think, generally speaking, yes, people could be on and everywhere. I mean, it doesn't mean you should be marketing there. I definitely, Zoe says something very accurate, is even if they're there, you have your certain resources, not just money, but manpower, focus, being able to reply to comments, so on and so forth. So you need to prioritize. Second is, you can't target for shit on TikTok for B2B tech. I'm only talking B2B tech, talking about physical, you know, products you can put in your office. You can't target them, and it's difficult to target them on Facebook, but it's much easier on Facebook than TikTok. So I don't see why one would spend their money and their time there, especially if you can't actually reach them when 99.99% of your views aren't going to be relevant. In addition, TikTok for you, it's very addicting, and when you scroll through it, you're not really going to leave. So kind of you were saying about, it's more of a brand awareness play. If anything, it is a brand awareness platform, because even if I think you had maybe an e-commerce product, unlike Instagram, where I think a lot of people might click through and make a purchase, I don't think you're going to get that on TikTok at all. So I think and then I think there's security issues with TikTok, that I wouldn't download it on my phone. And then also, of course, they might be in bed with the Chinese Communist Party, so there's human rights issues. So I won't be involved with that. I laugh, but it's a serious thing. So I don't think TikTok is a good way to go especially for targeting. It's not, but there is a brand awareness play that you could do, but there's no way to target them. But to wrap up TikTok, Zoe, how could you target, let's say, how would you be able to get the reach that you want on TikTok if you're trying to reach your audience? Is there hashtags or certain ways? I'm not an expert of the platform.
I would work with influencers, you know, and
influencers only.
It depends. Okay. It depends on the market, but we've got a client that sells to ophthalmologists, and there are some amazing influencers on TikTok, and we've come up with great ideas of how to work with them. So, you know, and they have a humongous amount of reach. So, it really depends, because I've seen some amazing B2B brands that are making a name for themselves on TikTok, and they're standing out. I agree.
I agree for B2C.
There's also a lot of talk about TikTok as a recruitment tool, and I think it has its place. It also has its security concerns, and it also has a lot of politics behind it. It has its place, but my main point is you cannot possibly creatively be everywhere. With limited goals and budgets, and I do organic social media. That's all I do, and I struggle to find ROI in organic social media on the platforms I am working on. When they come to me and say, "Where are my leads? Where are my leads?" You know, and I'm like, "Well, that comes from paid campaigns, not from organic campaigns." You know, TikTok's like a whole other world of where are my leads. Good luck with that. You know.
What do you think? My ignorance can't address this, but I've used TikTok and I did find it to be very local. Is this true with Chaim rights? It's location based mostly, so most of the things that you would see is very usually local, at least to your country.
I haven't
been on there for ages. Haven't
I
been there
find
for a
I
long
go in
time.
daily because I want to know and I want to learn, and I'm looking all the time for fun ideas and creative ideas. But I find it is very algorithmic driven. So if I've watched 10 videos of someone making bread, I will get another 10 videos of someone making bread. And what I found over time, in the beginning, I'd get some really dodgy content that I was like, that gave me most of my reservations about TikTok. Over
What do you
time,
mean by, what do you mean by dodgy? What do you mean? Just so I
like things that, you know, that made me scared to use TikTok as a tool, because I was like, well, you know, your brand can't control what people are seeing. So they might see your ad and then immediately after see someone, you know, doing things that you might not want to associate with, or you, there's very little control there, but that's not necessarily true. And I was about to say, I found over time, I find TikTok much cleaner, much more geared towards what I do enjoy watching and what I like. I really have to go outside of my own comfort zone to find new and interesting things. So some of that will be local, because if you engage with local people or local influencers, or you have a lot of local followers that you go to, you will see a lot more of that. But my TikTok, I see stuff from all over the world, and it is interesting and engaging. But you know what? YouTube's now got shorts, and the shorts are great, and reels are getting bigger and bigger reach, and they're also really interesting and fun. And there's a lot of trends happening on reels right now. So we're coming into some really exciting times in social media. LinkedIn have just introduced chat rooms. So I think there's going to be, you know, some exciting things happening this year. And we've all got to learn these new things all the time.
Agreed. Let's talk about algorithms on social platforms. Who do you think has the best algorithm? I'll go first. I think YouTube has an amazing algorithm, personally. I think they're very good, like suggest what to watch next. Not that I'm there for business, really. It's a podcast and marketing things, but I find that my opinion, I find that YouTube has a good algorithm. Facebook, I think the algorithm really needs to be boosted.
It sucks.
It's a challenge. Zoe disagrees, which is great. Or you're nodding. You're nodding. It sucks.
No, they've been raked over the coals on privacy, and they've clamped down and clamped down and clamped down to get a tool that is not useful to anyone anymore. And I think people in droves just don't go there anymore because there's zero value.
What do you mean? We can go.
Well, I can tell you, like for example, a massive change they made in the last year and a half was, if you're running a recruitment or a job ad, you're no longer allowed to target by job title, because that might be considered discriminatory. And I'm like, hold on a second. If you can't target a Java developer for a Java role, what can you target? Well, you can target someone because they're interested in Java, but not because they hold the job title Java developer. And that's just, it's silly. So it's become almost useless as an advertising platform to people who need to find work. And they're doing this because they don't want to offend anyone. They want to be really careful about their privacy. They want to be really careful about anything that could be considered political or discriminatory. But what's ended up happening is it's become almost, as I said, an irrelevant platform, because you cannot get specific on the targeting of who's seeing what. Now, trust me, if there's a Java developer out there looking for work, he wants to see ads for Java developers.
But why would that be relevant for Facebook and not for LinkedIn and Twitter? I mean, like, why would Facebook face these issues?
I wish I had someone at Facebook to ask. Anyone know anyone at Facebook to ask?
Because
well, the customer support is excellent. So
yeah, no, but I don't understand. But you're saying that, you know, I agree with you that there have been a lot of limitations imposed. But I'm finding that, you know, as everybody else, that LinkedIn has become the Facebook. It's like more and more people are sharing their own personal lives on LinkedIn. Some, in my opinion, are over the top. You know, some are over the top, and it's like too much information. Like, let's keep this professional.
Don't you think they're doing it because Facebook missed a trick, and that people need a social platform where they can have best of both worlds?
It's also that, but it's also the breaking down the barriers. It's also like the pandemic has broken down barriers.
Facebook were like, okay, you can do business here. You can have a company page, but you're not going to get any reach algorithmically.
Right.
You want it, you have to pay for it, but you can't target anyone. So businesses have left and they've moved to other platforms like LinkedIn, where you want to talk sometimes about how you are going through chemotherapy. And you look at people like Andy Storch. I don't know if you follow Andy. He has documented his entire journey, cancer journey. He's extremely engaging, extremely interesting. Some people say, well, that's for Facebook, but he can't be on Facebook for business purposes anymore. So he's doing it all on LinkedIn. And it means that Facebook messed something up.
I think this is like my favorite conversation. This is awesome. So I've been criticized a lot for a long time when I post on LinkedIn for years. This belongs on Facebook, not on LinkedIn. I actually posted about it when Israel won like 2 gold medals, that in the 2016 Olympics, we won like 2 bronzes, and I posted about the bronze, and a lot of people were like, this doesn't belong here, in 2016. And maybe someone said maybe there's a difference between a bronze and a gold. But in all seriousness, is that, in my opinion, why I post personal stuff on LinkedIn and not on Facebook is because the content on Facebook is garbage. It's anger. It's very emotional based. So I get politics that are emotional, that I agree with and that I don't agree with. I had pictures of people's kids that I'm not as interested in. And nothing personal, and it's just loaded with these things. Or, guys, I don't know if you guys remember this. There was like 9 months of my life where all I saw were video recipes. And I'm just like, am I the only one that doesn't eat this much butter? It's like, and I think these are the kind of things that I was just like, well, that's not what I'm looking for. I don't want your cat video. I don't want see pictures of your cats. I don't want half my feed to be your kids. And definitely not interested in your emotional instability about your politics, even if I tend to agree with you. I'm not interested in it. And that's why I like to put my stuff up on LinkedIn and not on Facebook. And that's why I prefer to scroll LinkedIn and not Facebook. But in my opinion, I think LinkedIn is going to soon hit a decline, because what's going to happen, what I just commented about, I didn't like about the content on Facebook. On LinkedIn, I'm getting they better fix this algorithm. I'm getting way too many damn posts. My new job, my new job, my new job. It's just boring and it's irrelevant. It's just, I don't care.
That's because everybody's moving jobs. It's not because
of
the algorithm.
I understand that, but the algorithm should, in my opinion, sorry, Billy, my opinion, they should say, if it's you have the word new job in your post, suppress it 40% or something. Additionally, I don't like, and this is a bias as a marketer, because I'm more connected to more marketers, and so are you guys. Like, I'm not interested in your, why am I thinking you're sharing your white paper to your LinkedIn followers? Who's that relevant for? 10 of them? You know what I mean? Like, organically or things like that. And they should, and they have that obligation, and they should elevate it, and they should do that. But the question is, like, why am I seeing that as equally as someone that can actually add value to my life, or inspiration to my life, or productivity hack to my life, a market, an interesting marketing insight like we're sharing here? Yeah. Sorry,
that's a fault, not of you and your viewership, but of the people sharing the white paper. And I've got 2 points I want to make here. One is, if you use LinkedIn strategically, and one of your things is to share white papers, you want to make sure you're connecting and engaging with the people that need to see those white papers. Right. That's a difference between slapping something on social and hoping the right people are going to see it, or actually being strategic with what you're doing. That's the first thing. The second thing is, the reality is, and we all have to face this reality, is that if you have a look at those personal posts, yes, they are more Facebooky, but they're also getting more engagement than anything else. Why?
But that's why a lot of people are doing it. Why they're writing
because people relate to
much.
people. Yeah,
no, but some of them are like, is this really true? Like, I often question it, and I'm like,
what do you mean?
I often question the feeds, the stuff that I see in my feed regarding a personal something that somebody has gone through with a terrible boss, or with sexual discrimination or whatever. Some of them I'm sure are correct, but some of them I'm like, how much of this has been sort of like
exaggerated for social media,
for social media, just like
any other platform,
any other media. And I'm like,
but we're also all ingrained with, you need to tell a story, you need to tell a story, you need to tell a story. It's 100% true. But I think, again, the bottom line is that human side of people, both from the professional side and the personal side, is what people relate to. And we see it because we do a lot of training and executive thought leadership. And even with sales directors, we see it again and again. They share something slightly more personal, or what we try to tell them is that personal is personality. Personal is personal experiences related
I like
to
that. Personal personality. That's good.
Yeah,
That's
related
very
to
good.
your professional brand. Try and make your stories about your professional brand. I once had a meeting with someone and it went this way, and tell your stories through your own personal expertise and personal experience, rather than what you had an ingrown toenail this morning or what you had for breakfast. So, if you, over time, if more people embrace that, we should see a shift, and that's where it should go. It shouldn't be more of the stories that Billy was referring to.
There's a great comment, so I just wanted to pull it up real fast. Is that right? People are trying to be inspirational or formative without room in the middle to be real. But Billy, you said something that's 100% correct, and I think it's a social media issue, is that people will embellish, lie, exaggerate. I don't know, lie, maybe, but that happens too. But because it is social media, they're doing eyeballs, and they're putting it in order to get and steal, right? In order to get take ideas in order to get views. I compare this a little bit to stand-up comedy in a way, is that like comedians will share a story, and it would be hilarious, but like they're not true. They have elements of truth that are exaggerated. They take two stories, and they say, oh, they're able to connect some fact or some part of it. They bring them together, and it's funny and it's hilarious, and they present it as if it's 100% true thing. But you need to understand, there's the purpose of the delivery in the story is some insight and comedy. If you're trying to be, and I think on social media, it's for attention and views, and we need to put on our right filters as we consume social media. I think there's one way to solve all of this, and I think it's interesting that no social media platform has really done this, is why can't I make a custom algorithm that anyone else can use? I don't get it. I don't know why I can't go to. I mean, like, what if, not me, I'm not great, I'm not a developer or anything, Zoe, I'm looking at your face, I want to hear what you have to say.
Mine's going like, what am I going to do next?
It's interesting you say that. For years and years, I've thought, why doesn't Facebook ask us to go through and
make my own algorithm? Yeah, or make my own algorithm. You know what? I want to see 10% politics, 20% personal growth.
No, I'd like to go one step further. Trending. When I was a mum with a new baby, I bought baby brands. It's not surprising. I wanted to see them in my feed. I want to know what's cheaper, what's better, what's got higher reviews. And if I go in and actually say, I want to see from a particular brand stuff, then that brand should pay Facebook less because I've chosen to see more of their content, or more. I don't know.
Right.
I'm getting the order of that wrong. But we should be able to have a choice in what we see.
Which is why they're all going to die. They don't want. Sorry. I'm very passionate.
Who's going to die? No,
who's going to die?
No, but if we go back to if we go back to your comment about promoting white papers, for example. So we do research in marketing envy. Like, for example, we released the PPC benchmarks for cybersecurity companies. And that's like really important information for marketers, because there isn't one conversation that we don't have with cybersecurity marketers. Like, MQLs are going to cost me how much? I need this how much budget in order to get started. And we're like, this is like something that we promote very proudly, because this is information that is good for our LinkedIn followers, me personally, and also the company. And I think that if you guys also were to release a white paper, ebook, whatever, stats about what's going on in the world of social media, what's going on in SEO, in LinkedIn, I promise you, your followers will eat it up. They'll ask you for more.
Yes, but let me give you an example, okay? I agree with you. For many of them, and it could be everyone's in a bubble, and we're in our own bubble. So we love this shit, right? And our prospects and our clients and everyone loves it. I
love how we've moved away from why to take on an Israeli agency, but this is probably one of the reasons.
No, that was intentional. I thought we were. I feel like we covered it. And
okay.
But I think when you have three great minds, I think we have an obligation to maybe cover other ground. And I saw some comments that kind of led astray from our original conversation.
Sorry for disturbing.
So no, it's cool. So the thing is that, like, I was very active on LinkedIn when I was in business school years ago, when it was just like a recruitment, like a virtual CV. And so you've connected with people and they're my followers. So they're from, they're some of my fraternity friends, my college friends and all that, some people that were in my community, my neighborhood. I was very active on connecting on LinkedIn. There's even a course on it in my undergrad at Temple University. And they had, they now follow me. So they're not interested in, let's say, a LinkedIn ads content or a cybersecurity guide to advertising. And you don't want to lose that unfollowing or whatever. Why can't I, at least me, why can't I just, I don't want to make groups, but like, I don't even get to see who chooses what. So you're more likely maybe to lose followers. When I was doing lives early on, 5 years ago, January 2017, when I first got LinkedIn Live, they had it so like whenever I went live, people get push notifications. Mm-hmm. So, and I would go live. I got all excited and I was like, all right, I'm going to dominate the space and figure it out. I was going live like twice a week. So a bunch of people unfollowed because they got push notifications because it's obnoxious. I hate push notifications. Right. So it's like, but why isn't there a setting or an option for them to choose when you follow Yoel, or I go to my profile, follow his, do you want to see lives? Or in general, in their settings, I want no push notification for lives, so I don't get it. Why am I getting, if you have notifications on a LinkedIn, let's say, why am I getting a notification if, let's say, I commented on someone's post, someone else I'm not connected to didn't tag me and didn't reply to my comment, but put their own comment, why am I getting a notification for that? Especially for someone that has a huge following and might have 100 comments on their posts. And why am I getting 100 notifications for each comment that comes after me that isn't a reply to mine or without my tag? So it's terrible. And so I don't know, I believe, this is my strong opinion, is the reason why, let's say, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, etc. I think LinkedIn, because they're slow in their development, that they don't let you create your own algorithm, because they think that's when they start to lose control over what their audience sees. And once they lose that control, I think it's a big issue. However, I think if you were to be able to pay people, this is what I would do. Hey, go make your own algorithm. And what we're going to do is we're going to let advertisers put ads on your algorithm. So whoever chooses to use your algorithm, now we're incentivizing people to create their own algorithms, and then we're helping advertisers. So I made this amazing algorithm that's perfect for your target audience, right? And like, great, now you can advertise on people using that algorithm. They'd pay a huge premium on that. And everyone would win, and they should give a cut to those people making those algorithms. The user experience and user interface that we'll get is much better. People are going to be incentivized to create better algorithms that suit the individual people and communities, and Facebook or the social media platforms will make more money. They'll be paying a premium. And as advertisers, we'll be happy to pay a premium in order to get the proper messaging in front of the right people. But there's none of this. And I think it's like, why would you give this up? And I'm the first person to think of this. I can't be, right? There's got to be some control issue, not to sound conspiratorial, but it's just so weird, like you were saying, Zoe, how until now, why none of the platforms let you create your own algorithm, which will make me stay on your platform and consume more ads. It's just so weird to me. Anyway, I don't know. Yeah. That's my rant. Maybe go have a cigarette.
It was a good one.
Thanks.
I think we need another whole live session.
Yeah, on each of them, one on algorithms, one on everything, and maybe we'll start a series. So let's wrap up. We're 15 minutes over. So where can we find you, Zoe? Maybe you want to tell us a little bit about you, social media, and how they can follow you and social media.
It's all in the name, Zoe.
Okay.
Although a lot of people mispronounce it. It was such a mistake leaving that E in there. So it's ZoecialMedia, not Zoe Social Media, but ZoecialMedia.
I will admit to being guilty to that the first time I saw it years ago. Likewise. All right, so Zoe Bermant is ZoecialMedia. And Billy, where can people find you? LinkedIn,
marketingenvy.com. We're on LinkedIn as well, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you want.
Awesome. Billy Cena with a C. And my name is Yoel Israel with Wadi Digital. Feel free to follow on LinkedIn. Probably the best. Naturally, we're doing a LinkedIn Live to reach us. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for our LinkedIn Live. If you have any other questions, comments, reservations, or anything that you guys thinking or wondering, feel free to message us. Maybe we'll do some more of these things. It gets really lively, especially when that's the best part. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and have an awesome day. Happy marketing, and keep your marketing in Israel. Serve yourself and your clients.
Do it.